Dynasty Evaluation Show. We are here today with a special guest, Alan Seslowsky, JT Orange, Justin Taylor, my co-host with the Mo-host. As usual with me today, we are going to talk about quarterbacks, what happened at the Combine, how, who hurt themselves, who held up themselves, all the good stuff like that. So let's get to the show. So thanks for joining us today, everyone. First of all, who are we with today? Alan, you've been here before, but tell everybody where they can find you at, what's going on, what do you got going on in the world of fantasy football?
How the hell do I retweet this thing, man? I'm looking on your Twitter. I'm trying to help you out here a little bit. Retweet it. But it didn't even pop up on your Twitter.
Let me go to Fantasy and Frames.
All right, let me do that. See, everyone can see how the sausage is made here right now, right? This is what content creators go through, right? All we want to do is get our stuff seen. And how do we read? Okay, Fantasy and Frames. There we go. All right, so then I can retweet it from there. All right.
Yeah. You can yours too, though. I see it on yours as well. So
I don't see it. All right, anyway, I'll find it. I'm only so you guys went live from on John's.
Yeah, it should be on mine also. So
all right. Anyway, at Alan Seslowsky on Twitter. I don't call it X. You guys call it X, or is that where you can't even make a big deal about it? It's corny to make a big deal about it still.
Yeah. I did Twitter forever, and then I went on a show and I called it X, and I've been trying to talk myself into X. And then they're like, we call it Twitter on this show. I was like, see, the one time I do call it X, they're like, no, we call it Twitter. Because I still call it Twitter. When you say X could be anything, and people don't know what Twitter is, but X is like X what?
Right. And then you have
platform. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's the same thing with Meta, right? We didn't buy into Meta at first. Now it's kind of like, okay, you're not forced to call it Meta because it's the parent company. So yeah. I don't know. I understand why Elon wanted to change it, guys, because he wanted to this is the new version of it. It's where speech is more or less, constrained and all that stuff. So maybe we should respect it and call it X.
I'm trying. It's just so weird to say X instead of typing out Twitter or something, but it
feels wrong, right? It feels wrong. Right. There we go. I found you, by the way. I found you.
You know what feels right is Twitter. It feels right. It feels good. And you know what else feels good?
Tweeting. What are you Xing?
You're posting. You're posting.
Posting. Yeah,
you're posting.
I like the tweeting. I'm like, tweeting. We're tweeting.
Tweet it. But that was the what was the guy's name that ran Twitter before Elon?
No idea.
Yeah. Anyway, that was his thing. So anyway, yes, I am reposting. I finally found it. You could follow me at Alan Seslowsky. Everything is there. Everything. If you even want to see it, it's all there.
JT, where do you find you at?
Yep. Find me hosting shows with you here at Fantasy Frames and Commissioner Evaluation Podcast. Also, you can check me out at my podcast, The Stew with JT Brew. We do a little bit of everything, a little bit of gambling during the season. If you're into hockey, got a hockey podcast on Wednesday nights. We're actually going early this week, a Tuesday night show to talk about the hockey trade deadline. So for anybody that's into hockey as well as football.
I won my first week of the playoffs, JT. Thank you very much. Hockey playoffs are the best.
Nice win.
So let's talk about quarterbacks today. So who handled themselves? Alan, I'll start with you. Who handled themselves best with media this week? Because there was some kind of some how do you call them, lowball questions, some nice questions, some good questions. Some of the players had real good fun. Who handled themselves most with the media, you think?
I mean, I'll tell you who I respect the most is Caleb, man, because I like the era of player empowerment, the leverage going back to the player. This is I'm in my late 40s. I'm 48 years old. I know you guys are from the quote old school when it was the team owners and the media kind of had the power, right? Now that these players have access to more people just through their social media channels than they can get on ESPN News, right? And people that they care about, they have directed. The leverage has shifted for the elite players. I mean, this started a few years ago when we saw Kirk Cousins demand a fully guaranteed contract, and now it's developed into, then it went to Christian McCaffrey's not going to play in a championship college game, and now it's, hey, you know what? I'll show up, but I'm not going to cede my leverage to you. So, I thought Caleb, there was a couple of he should have been prepared for some of the harder questions. He wasn't as smooth, or he wasn't as likable, but I like that he stood his ground. He was there, and there's a lot of Caleb hate, but I think I'm now a fan of his. Even I didn't have a feeling on him before because I thought he handled himself well.
JT, you were at the combine. What did you see with these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I was at the combine. I was mostly there for actual drills and all that. I didn't go to the actual media days. I went later in the week and just kind of really concentrated on watching the drills and everything. So mostly what I saw was, the clips of everybody kind of talking, answering. But I agree with Alan, man. Players, I actually like that they don't have to give the canned answer anymore. That was like, oh, you got to say this or you're not a team player. If you don't say this exact same thing, well, you're not a leader. I like these guys are showing a little personality. I actually think it's funny because some of these guys see backlash when they don't give like what people think should be the proper answer. And I'm like, I actually like you more now because you are giving me a canned answer. So I like you said, Caleb had some issues with some questions. He's going to get some. But I thought a lot of the guys, I just think, see, everybody wants these guys to be themselves until they don't like who they are. And then they're like, well, don't be yourself anymore. And I'm like, well, no, the guy I remember last year getting a ton of hate was Jordan Addison. And just people were just like, I don't know if I like Jordan Addison. And people liked Zay Flowers' personality more. So like, I like Zay Flowers as a prospect more. I'm like, why? Because you like the way he talks better than you like the way Jordan Addison talks. It just threw me off how people kind of like jump ship on a guy. So I kind of like to see the differences because we're all people. We're all different. Not everybody's the same. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good or a bad football player, depending on how your personality is. So.
Yeah, it is a popularity contest because you have to like the players to root for them. And just landing on your team.
I don't. I like the assholes, right? I mean,
I always said the best players.
I would root for Saddam Hussein if he can score me fantasy points, John.
I'm a huge Ndamukong Suh fan, so that's I guess there we go. I like Terminators. I like guys just go out there and like, let's go. I'm here to play football.
Antonio Brown, you gotta like Hill.
Yeah, but I like those guys. I like the bad guy, that kind of stuff. So that's I guess that'll say it. Which guys didn't show up or didn't, besides Caleb Williams, which guys didn't participate, kind of thing like that? Anybody that you wanted to see that didn't show up, that didn't participate in these drills, or not all the ones you wanted to see anyway?
Johnny, wait, you didn't say who you thought stood out as far as like personality wise. I'm just curious if you were in line with how we thought, or if there was someone else.
I am. I'm not a big Caleb Williams fan. I'm on the train where the Bears are kind of in the same situation where he's just like Justin Fields. I'm that kind of guy. So I don't really. I just feel like Justin Fields is. Here it is. The Bears drafted Justin Fields and said, hey, this team blows. You got 3 years, 4 years. We're going to build around you. Well, when it gets to that part, we'll re-sign you. The future's you. And now they're there, and they're like, all right, he's gone. Like, get out of here. I'm not a huge Justin Fields guy. I was more of a Trevor Lawrence in that draft class kind of guy. And the NFL showed that they weren't a big Justin Fields fan either. But Justin Fields has so many flashes. And I see the way he handles himself. He doesn't talk that much shit about a lot of people that around the team. That the locker room absolutely loves him. I just wish that the Bears would just keep Justin Fields and trade the 101 pick and keep building around Justin Fields for a little bit. It's a debate going back and forth. It depends on what side, start over again, blah, blah, blah. I do like the way Caleb Williams handled himself at the press conference because he asked some shitty questions. They asked a lot of questions, and he participated in everything with a smile on his face. And it really meant a lot to see the guys, try to sour candy, do this, every stupid thing that they had threw at him. He handled it with a lot of respect, a lot of grace, a lot of professionalism. I'll say that.
Let's bottom line this, guys. You guys play in a million dynasty leagues. I mean, you have the 101. You're taking them, right? In rookie drafts, there's
Depends
no other
on my
player.
team build.
No, just team build neutral.
I'm probably taking. There's a few leagues I know I'm taking Marvin Harrison. I'm like at 101 or 102, but it's one or the other. For me, I'm taking one of those guys, and it depends. And like John said, I know it depends on my team build because there's some leagues I really need a wide receiver, but I'm taking one or the other. To me, I don't think you can take anyone but one of those two.
How many years did we see quarterbacks go 101? There was a generational talent. We knew this guy was going to be great, and blah, blah, and he fell on his face. Like, I'm not that guy. You could see that, that Marvin Harrison is going to be great. You know that. So I don't – I mean, there's been receivers that fell on their face too, but for the most part, quarterbacks
not
fail
101 receivers, not guys like that. Like there's people like Jamar Chase in our Superflex leagues went at like 105, 106, right? I mean, so you don't want to make that mistake again. But okay, let's say you have pick 2 and Marvin Harrison's gone. That's really what my point is, right? Is like if you have a top 2 pick, it's going to be hard, like to be that contrarian. And okay, it's fine if you're doing a million leagues and you have a $25 league, you just want to be cute and take Malik Neighbors or Jaden Daniels, fine. But if you're in like a $300 league and you get one click, you're not. Most of us are just going to be like, okay, look, even if he's quote downside, it's like Trevor Lawrence hasn't hit his upside. It wasn't. You're not like thrilled you made that pick. Trevor Lawrence, excuse me, it's hit his floor for fantasy football, not his ceiling, and it's might just be how it is.
Yeah. Wendy, good morning. Good morning, fellas. I don't care what anyone says. I love Joe Milton. You and me both. Everybody knows I'm the biggest Joe Milton fan in the world. So my 101 was Marvin Harrison. Yes, I agree with that also. I think I'm in the Marvin Harrison fan thing. I think you can get more from Marvin Harrison. To be honest with you, even if you trade before the actual season starts, you could probably get more from Marvin Harrison when after camp starts, when draft wherever Marvin Harrison lands. It doesn't matter. I think he's quarterback proof. I think he's team proof.
What if he lands in New England and they take a second round quarterback, guys? Marvin Harrison, pick 3, New England, and then New England comes back in round 2 with Michael Penix.
So he gets that's the way JT says Penix. I absolutely love it.
Well, I used to call him. His nickname was 12 inch.
Yeah.
But
I don't care because he's going to get 150 targets. So I mean, whether or not they're quality targets, and he's still going to get 100, probably 100 receptions. It is what it is, So I'll make it happen. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing with Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson back in the day when he had, it's Blake Bortles is terrible, but Allen Robinson still had 1,600 yards and 18 touchdowns. So it is what it is.
Fair enough.
Let's see. Who threw when you were watching the combine, who do you think would look the best? Who threw the most accurate balls? Just kind of like was he's hitting guys on, where they were supposed to be.
Hey, JT, don't you think these guys should have to wear shoulder pads when they do those drills?
I kind of do, because it's interesting. There's like, okay, we don't wear shoulder pads, we don't wear helmets, but like, don't you want to see them throwing that? Because it's a whole lot easier to throw without the shoulder pads on. I mean, everybody can look a lot better when you don't have to throw with the pads on. So I actually kind of agree with you. It seems kind of funny that they don't. And same thing with wide receivers, like the guys like.
I'm cool with the
body
wide
catchers.
Cool
the only thing I'm thinking about this, the guys that are body catchers and it hits their pads, you can hear it hit their pads all the time. Like you don't get that as much when they're not wearing the pads, where you can see that when a guy's a body catcher, it gets into his pads all the time.
Hold on a second, you guys. You guys play football?
Yes. I mean, not anymore.
The pads are the same as having your shoulder. Like you don't even notice. Joe Milton can throw a 75-yard pass in a game with his shoulder pads on, because his shoulder pads for a quarterback are like something the third grader uses. Like they're so small. It's not like offensive linemen.
They have adjusted them a lot. You're right. They have made them a lot smaller to where they are easier to throw. I remember throwing in high school as a running back with my running back shoulder pads on a tailback pass. I had to get into that thing and throw it a little bit differently, a little more sidearm, because I couldn't get my arm over the top with the pads on as big as they were.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The Rydell pads, the ones that had like stacked plastic on top of plastic.
I think it's harder for those guys with the rib pads on to get than it is without the shoulder pads, because shoulder pads are made for a third grade girl. It's ridiculous. There's no. Yeah. It's not the same, but.
They should have to do it while being testicular shocked. I mean, that's the real test,
That would be a big test.
Yeah. No, I think Milton's the obvious answer here, right? He was the big arm guy. I mean, it seems like he's probably going to be no better than a 3rd round pick, just based on like consensus view. It would be a shock to see him go in the 2nd round. If you guys disagree with that, I want to hear. But I mean, but that, by the way, that's not a knock on him. We've seen so many times a guy like Joe Milton have like spot starts. And really, what does that mean? Be valuable to us in Superflex Dynasty leagues, right? Drew Lock goes on a little run, helps you out. I mean, we can name a million of these 2nd and 3rd round guys. I'm not talking about Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson that go on to be like, $50 million a year. But Milton seems like a player who, and maybe Will Levis is on this trajectory a little bit, that you're going to keep on your roster and break glass in case of emergency, and you're going to be happy with it. Now, if he's got more upside than that, I would love to hear it from you guys.
I love Joe Milton, but I understand what Joe Milton is, and I know he's got a rocket arm, and I know that and everybody made a big deal about his Senior Bowl, and he threw this ball on the ground. I think he just kind of like was trashing that ball because nobody was open on that play. Actually, he went 9 for 12 in that game. He threw the 9. Nobody said anything about the 9 balls he completed. I like Joe Milton. I think he's good. I do think he's got flaws. I do think he has problems reading defenses. In that Senior Bowl, you saw he threw right to the linebacker. I mean, he hit the linebacker right in the face pretty much. Reading defense is his biggest problem. And that's it's not easy to train someone to read a defense. You see, Justin Fields still has problems with that right now. That's his biggest flaw. But, man, I like his – you could teach someone to read defense. You can't teach someone to throw the ball 75 yards in the air. Those are the things that I like about Joe Milton is the tools are there. It might take 2 years. That's okay. I have number 30 roster spot that's sitting there with Joe Milton's name on it in every league. That's fine. I'll worry about that. But JT,
what round does he get drafted in, JT?
In the NFL, probably the 5th round.
5th round, okay.
And I'm not.
I'm leaning 4, so I'm
4.
kind of right in between you guys. I'm leaning the 4th. I think teams are going to like him because they think they can deal with the project. I think everybody knows he's a project. That's obvious. This was the perfect thing for him to combine. He looked good, especially next to some of these other guys. They made him look even better. Throwing that 75-yarder that I did. I mean, when he got up, I told my son, I said, "Watch this guy throw. He is going to launch this thing." And just to go back and watch it again, he just flicked that thing. It wasn't even like he really wound up, got into it. He didn't give like throwing as hard as he could. Man, he flicked that thing 75 yards and it looked pretty effortlessly. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be a team that's going to see that potential and be like, hey, we can mold this guy. We can make him into something. So I think there's no way that there's not teams out there who don't want him. I just don't see anybody jumping way up to get him just because of the college film. Like the film was just, it was just very okay. But I think he was the most intriguing guy there just because of all the physical tools. And he just, man, in underwear Olympics, you can't get much better than Joe Milton. I mean, the guy just looks like a monster.
If you're the Jets or the Seahawks or something like that, when you have a quarterback this year, especially like the Jets, Aaron Rodgers' clock is ticking, that kind of deal. The Jets, the Seahawks, teams with really talented offensive players on their team. You have to think about, throwing possibly a 4th, probably a 5th round pick on Joe Milton and thinking that, yes, this is our future. He's going to learn from a great quarterback for a year or so and, learn how to read defenses in the room while he's sitting there watching this guy, this walking Hall of Famer, throw these awesome passes and show him how to dissect the defense.
I mean, 6'5", 235, man. He's going to be a player that the crowd is cheering for to come in. You know what I'm saying?
And he runs like a 4.40 or whatever. What it was, his 4.40. I mean, it's not just his throwing power. He's just an athlete, too.
Yeah, no, this is, like I said, I think a team that's not a Trevor Lawrence, like, set at quarterback, even like you're unsure, like Joe Burrow, like any team that doesn't have those guys, we can all go over like the top, should take a quarterback every year in every draft.
Agreed.
At least one.
So who looked most handsome running in slow motion in the 40-yard dash when they were running down the field?
There's only one answer.
That guy's hair was fantastic. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, so you're talking about Sam Hartman, right? I mean, that he's not getting drafted, right? I mean, he's not a top 10 quarterback. I mean, last round maybe, right? Or is he like a camp?
To me, he seems like a guy. I could see him making a roster and being in the league for a decade. I don't ever see him starting other than absolutely, we're on the 3rd stringer. Something crazy happened. We got to put him in. I like the guy. I have a waitress that she's in love with him. She thinks he's the best looking thing that's ever happened. She just absolutely loves him. I sent her pictures at the combine of him. She was like, "Oh my gosh!" So, he's a guy. I know. I feel like he's a guy that can make a roster. I don't know, man. I just don't see him as a guy that you're going to look at and go, "Yeah, we could totally start him if we needed to." I just don't see that.
2 words. Practice squad.
Yes.
Yep. That feels like perfect. Practice squad, move them up. Emergency situations, move them back down to practice squad. I agree with you on that.
Well, Johnny, I just want to ask you a question, and I don't mean to cut you off there, but if you're in the 5th round of your rookie draft and there's like a running back that got drafted in round 7 in the real NFL draft, or Sam Hartman, and that running back projects like to be RB3 on a team, would you take that guy or are you taking Hartman?
I'm in the I feel like Hartman's going to be a practice squad player, maybe a backup somewhere, maybe get 1 start each season. And I don't think anybody's going to trade for him when he gets his 1 start. So I'm definitely in the 3rd, 4th round running back. My team is littered with no-name running backs. JT knows that. My whole team.
Snoop Connor.
He's on my team. Yes.
But those guys, the thing is, when those guys start, you could actually use them in your lineup. You know, it's going to be 12 to 15 carries. And again, maybe not Snoop Connor, but there's a gazillion of those guys. But every once in a while, you pick up Ty Chandler in the 5th round of your rookie draft, right? And now all of a sudden, wait a second, he could be part of a 1A, 1B committee, right? It's been 3 years. Khalil Herbert was a 5th round rookie pick. I think you hit it right. I always like taking quarterbacks, but when you're talking about that deep down the quarterback rankings, it's better just to plug your roster in lineup leagues with guys like that. I think you hit it.
Yeah, I got the Michael Carters and stuff like that all over my roster. That guys who are possibly have some kind of relevance if somebody goes down or that kind of stuff. But yeah, I agree. 100%. There's a lot of good. Sorry, this isn't a running back show. But there's a lot of good running backs in this. People who said this is a terrible running class were in the wrong here. So, but we'll talk to quarterbacks. Who needed to prove something to everyone by showing up and going to combine? Who needed to go there and say, yes, this is me. I am him. Like, this is why I'm doing it. And they killed it.
It's got to be JJ. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, JJ.
Yep. No. I was going to agree with you. I think it's got to be JJ McCarthy, right? I mean, he was the guy because he was the next biggest name there that when everybody else didn't throw, he was the guy I was super excited to see. I wanted to see what he looked like next to some of these other guys. And for me, he was the guy that popped. He just the arm strength, the way he was throwing the ball, the fluidity, the footwork. I was like, okay, this is the guy that we're hearing people talk about. Like, okay, he didn't get to throw a lot at Michigan, but I want to see what he can do. I thought he was the guy that raised the stock the most, and just the fact that he was like, oh, is he a first rounder? To me, the way he performed, I thought he sold somebody. I don't know what team it is, but he sold one team on. I'm taking this guy in the first round. I thought for me, it was him clearing away. And I thought he had the best performance outside of the Joe Milton, 75-yard bombs that were beautiful. I thought McCarthy was the guy, which was funny because I saw so many people say like, oh, his ball placement was terrible on some of these passes. And I'm like, really? I was watching that pass and I was like, I thought it was a pretty good ball placement that the wideout just didn't run to the spot. So, it always can be objective on who's looking at it, but I thought it was JJ McCarthy cleared away.
All right, here's the scenario. Here's how it's going to play out in my mind. All right, guys. So the 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. Whoever trades up, trades down, we don't know. Arizona's on the clock. They want Marvin Harrison, but the Giants come in. Hey, move back 2 spots because they want McCarthy, right? You hear all the talk about they're done with Daniel Jones. And they get like a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick with it. So now they're going to get Neighbors instead of Marvin Harrison. Is that additional 2nd or 3rd round pick that they get worth the downgrade from Harrison to Neighbors? That's a decision they're going to have to make because the Giants, in my judgment, like they're the ones that could move up. And Arizona, I mean, who else is going to? So everyone's going to want McCarthy. The market's going to be biggest for him because he's the last of a tier, right? Even if you think Caleb is better, he's still in that, okay, this is a real first-round quarterback. So I think, in my mind, I think the Giants are going to move up a couple spots, and then Arizona's going to have to make that decision. Is there really that big of a difference?
JT, go ahead. But
yeah, I think if I'm them, I'm probably making that move. I think most people have those guys pretty close on their board. I've been a Marvin guy, secretly forever. Marvin Harrison Sr. is my favorite player of all time, so I'm a little biased there. But I think they're pretty close. And if you're a Cardinals, you're a rebuild like that, to go ahead and get maybe another 2nd where you can turn around and possibly add another wide receiver that's really good that falls out of the first round. That's where I'm like, ooh, maybe I do make that move so I can double up there. And especially,
type, right?
Yep, maybe they go Coleman, and then that frees them up to go cornerback or something else with their other 2nd round pick. It kind of gives them a free wide receiver throw there. So if I'm Arizona, if I can get a 2nd out of it to move back 1 or 2 spots, I'm probably doing that.
I'm in the exact same boat. I think the echo chamber of Twitter just says that Marvin Harrison's the best thing since sliced bread. So you have to draft him, or else you're going to lose out your entire draft. And there's not that big of a difference between Neighbors and Harrison. And then some people have him as number 1 behind, above Harrison. So yeah, that's a good move to get draft capital on top of a player that caliber. They're probably in the same tier to me as far as that's concerned. So yeah,
Johnny,
I would do that. Yes.
Would McCarthy be the 101 next year if he stayed in school?
That's a JT question. I'm not as comfortable with the next draft class, all the players that are in there. So JT might answer that, but I've seen McCarthy. He's a local kid, so he went to school not too far from here. So I've been reading about him and watching him play for a couple years now. I know who he is. I know a lot about him, but next year's class, I can't answer that question. But I do know that he is. I don't want to go as far as calling him a game manager, but his accuracy, his ability to read a defense, his ability to run the ball, I mean, he looks pretty good rushing the ball, making plays happen, extending plays. I think no matter what, even last year, this year, next year, I think he's probably, I don't know about number 101, but he's definitely in the top 10 of any class.
10, he's top 10 this year.
Yeah. So
I would have had him if he would have went back to school. He would have been right in the 101 conversation for me. I've got right now in my rankings, I got Shedeur Sanders for Colorado as 101, and I've got Carson Beck from Georgia as my 102. McCarthy would have been right there with those three guys.
So no wonder he came out, right?
He would have been right in my mix. So again, for him, if he goes top 10, I don't know if it's that big of a difference to go back to school to try to be the 101 if you're going to go top 10 anyway. And it's really, I can't see any scenario at this point that he gets out of the top 15. I just didn't think there's any way. There's too many teams that will want him. And I just think someone's going to get nervous and move up because they're afraid he's not going to get to him, and they don't want to let somebody else get in front of him. So I think he's going to end up getting into the top 10 because I think somebody's going to have to end up moving up. And even if that is the Giants go, hey man, we got to get all the way to 4 to get him. I could see it happening. I just think maybe we're all crazy and the teams aren't thinking this way, but teams do not want to miss out on QB. They do not want to wait and miss out.
His floor is 12, right? Because Denver said they're already moving on from Russ, so the floor is 12.
Yeah, and I think, 11, 12 Vikings, we'll talk about it later, but that was kind of my landing spot for him was the Vikings. But I just think it's a race to see who's going to give up more to get in front of the other teams. Right. So that's where I think you got Broncos, you got Vikings, you got Raiders.
The advantage the Giants have, the advantage is that the Cardinals don't have to lose out on tier 1 wide receiver.
Way down. Yeah, they don't have to move all the way down. Yeah. So they should be the clear-cut team that should be, if they want to make that move, if they're willing to do it, they should be able to do it, you'd think.
So we all knew McCarthy was going to show up there. We kind of knew that he was going to do all the drills. Who showed up there and did the drills and kind of hurt themselves?
Hurt themselves.
I'll talk about the one guy that I was slightly disappointed. I don't think it hurt himself because I always think, the people say don't go to this because you might hurt yourself. I think the upside is way above anything you do on that at the thing that's going to hurt you overall because people are going to watch your tape. They're just trying to say like, all right, I saw this on tape. Do I see this now with this guy? Or Bo Nix to me didn't necessarily hurt himself, but he was the guy I was just watching him and watching. I'm like, man, I'm just not very impressed. Like the throws. And when especially he was in the group with JJ McCarthy. And like, I would see JJ throw a pass and then I'd see Nix throw the pass like 2 passes later. And I'm like, man, JJ's ball just looks so much better. It looks so much more effortless. And I tell you what, when the fans will get into and they're throwing the bombs and Milton's throwing the bombs, JJ's deep ball looked really nice. It looked really nice into the outside. He threw it. Nix looked like he was struggling to get the ball down the field. He was one of those guys, like he was kind of having to wind up, and even winding up and kind of chucking it, the ball was fluttering. It wasn't great. So as far as underwear Olympics, Nix, I thought hurt himself the most. But again, he's a guy I think has to be in the right system at the NFL level if he's going to be if he's going to end up being good. He's got to be in a short West Coast passing system. I think that's just the way you got to go with it. But he's the guy that, to me, struggled the most, I thought.
Yeah, what you said that you observed being there is it translated on TV as well, and I'm sure John saw it as well. Yes. It's like, it's like the balls fell flat. But again, what's the most important thing in the NFL is processing speed. That above all is you're going to have there. And then I like what you said that he's going to have to be offense specific versus just, hey, let's take him and make him ours. You have to adapt the talent there. So Bo Nix, look, good size, 6'2", 215-ish. In college, the production there, 45 touchdowns, only a handful of picks. Someone's going to want that game manager type. Those guys are useful in the NFL, even if they're backup guys, so yeah, you can't hurt yourself that much, but he did stand out as looking not as impressive as the others. Can't say it better than you said it.
So there's a handful of left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL. Michael Vick, loved watching him throw. Steve Young, Hall of Fame quarterback. Tim Tebow, the greatest college player of all time. The Pillsbury throwboy, Jared Lorenzen. What do you think? Michael Penix have any issues being left-handed in this draft? Do you think his draft's going to fall? His stock's going to fall at all?
Isn't Tua left-handed as well?
He is.
Yeah. You think that stuff is true? Like the ball spins differently. Tyreek Hill doesn't seem to have a problem with it.
It 100% is, because when Michael Vick came in and threw a touchdown, a surefire touchdown pass to Antonio Brown in the back corner of the end zone, I saw the ball. He was accepting the ball with the ball turning this way, and the ball was going the opposite way. It rolled right out of his hand. So it depends on who throws it, how fast the velocity is. But yes, it is a big deal catching a ball that spins the opposite way from a quarterback. It takes a minute to get used to that, but yes, I do believe it is.
Well, then
I think you get used to it. My quarterback in high school was left-handed. Our senior year after we had a right-handed QB all the way rest through, I think it is a little bit of adjustment just to see where the ball tails and does something. But I think these guys are pros. Once they get used to a guy, I don't think it's as big of a deal. I think maybe at first, if you're not used to having a lefty throw to you and you go out and run a drill, you got to maybe make some adjustments. But I think once you're playing with a guy, I don't think any of the guys in Miami are like, oh man, Tua being lefty is really throwing me off this whole season. I think once you're used to it, I think it's not as big of a deal as when you first have a guy thrown to you left-handed.
Let's not forget about the most important measurement for Michael Penix, his 10.5 inches. Hands. What the hell were you talking about?
I'm nowhere near that. I'm Irish, buddy.
Yeah. Just the tip. Just pull out the tip.
That's all she gets is the tip. So what's pick a landing spots for who's going. What's the best possible landing spot for these players? Where is the best spot? Let's say the Bears trade back. Who do you want to trade up to get Caleb Williams?
Right now, it's got to be, Minnesota, all the usual suspects, Minnesota, Atlanta, Denver, right? Like even Vegas for fantasy football would be pretty good, right? It's indoors. They're potentially in shootouts against the rest of that division. They still have Devontae Adams. For fantasy, I still like that spot. By the way, Chicago is a terrible landing spot. Name the last good fantasy quarterback in Chicago. Yeah, and Jay Cutler was okay. What was he, like QB 12?
Well, but he had no offensive line at all and no receivers. They had a good defense.
Brandon Marshall?
Absolutely terrible. It was it. And Brandon Marshall wasn't.
Well, that's it. That's a Hall of Famer.
No. Because it was his time in Denver with Jay Cutler, but
I'm just saying that I'm not saying it can't happen, just that it hasn't been so far, right? Maybe it's the stadium, maybe it's the win, maybe I don't know. Who knows? It may just be a coincidence, but Caleb Williams the upside expectation should come down. So best landing spot of the available teams that will need a quarterback is obviously Atlanta. Like, okay, if Kirk Cousins is healthy and goes to Atlanta, for example, Drake London's a redraft first-round pick at the end of the first round, right? Right. That's where I would take him, So Atlanta's obviously the one. And then you go into it's all about the receivers. Justin Jefferson for Minnesota. And then I guess Denver after that. And then that's a Sean Payton upside feeling right there.
Do you think Sean Payton is too full of himself? I think he embarrassed Russell Wilson this year. I don't. Is he that good of a coach? Did Drew Brees win him a championship? Like, is Sean Payton really that good of a coach, or do you think he's just a name? It was kind of disgusting watching Sean Payton yell at players, like established players in the NFL this year. No matter how bad Russell Wilson is, what's you guys' thoughts on Sean Payton, real fast?
Better than Robert Saleh. I'm a Jets fan.
Well, let's not say much. Defensive,
exactly. The bar's low.
Yeah.
Go ahead, JT.
I just think Peyton's he's one of those old school guys that is just like we're seeing they're getting phased out of the league because you just can't do that. The players have too much power. You can't just yell at players and demand them do these things all the time. Now I hear there's people are like, oh, it's like Mike Tomlin not hard enough on the guys. I think at some point, the players got to accept responsibility. Like, you're a pro, you got to either show up, you want to either be the best or you don't. Like, coaches can coach you, but they can't force you to do it anymore. I think, you used to be able to kind of force guys out of fear. If you were a Bill Belichick or, a Mike Ditka, you could force guys to kind of act the way or do some things. Yeah. I just don't think it just doesn't work that way in our society anymore. These guys have too many people in their ear their whole life. They're not getting yelled at by high school coaches anymore. Like, that's not the way you get players anymore. So I just think that's why I think, especially when guys sit out and then they come back, I think a lot of times they think, oh, if I just was more disciplined, they're more disciplined, and they think more discipline means yelling. And I just think you lose a lot of people when you yell. There's just people they just tune you out.
The Sean McVays, the Shanahans are like the perfect mix. Age matters a little bit, right? Relatability. It does. And Tomlin might be the upper end of that, but he still seems to be one of the best coaches. Think about Antonio Brown. He was like grounded and mostly disciplined until the very end, and then he goes elsewhere, and then the CTE kicks in. It's like,
I think people are going to look back one day and be like, the fact that Mike Tomlin held it together for a lot of those years with those with all these guys,
Le'Veon Bell and
everybody who fell off the deep end the second they left the Steelers. I mean, I think people are going to go back and, man, like maybe he was a lot better at managing players and holding it together than people gave him credit for.
People are like, I wouldn't want him in Chicago. I would take him as a Bears fan in a heartbeat over anything we have in Chicago.
How about Harbaugh? Do you think he's going to, because now he's worked with young kids in Michigan, and now he's coming in, but he has that old school vibe to him, Johnny McGlynn. Do you think that he's going to have success with the team, like from that perspective, being able to, let's say, command the locker room, for lack of a better term?
I think the Harbaughs are just weird people, man. I'm not. You know what? They were in a Super Bowl, coaching against each other before. They're very talented coaches. I'm just not a Harbaugh fan. I'm not, but I do think they're very good coaches. Yes, I mean, if Jim Harbaugh was any of the Harbaughs were to come to the Bears, I'd be skeptical, but I'd be happy at the same time. I'm just, JT, what do you think about the Harbaughs? Because I know they're good coaches. Some people you just don't feel,
I think his time at Michigan is maybe letting him adjust a little bit. I think he's maybe earned that with the players a little bit more. I think he's going to actually have a pretty good run this time. I think the Chargers are a nice situation for him. I think they're pretty respected guys throughout the community as far as other coaches. I think players kind of like them. I think they're a little more of that whole hardcore old school guy, but I think they get away with it a little bit better because they're almost like your hard uncle instead of your really hard dad. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think people like look at them slightly differently. So when they are kind of hard on people, I think they kind of take it a little bit differently. So that's just my 2 cents, but I think they can, I think they're both good coaches. I think he's going to be successful in the NFL.
Is the Chargers really the dream job it was like a year or two ago? Because it seems like they drafted a terrible receiver last year. They lost. They're losing Eckler. The team itself, Keenan Allen is old and hurt now. I mean, he's good when he's on the field, but I just feel like, how long can he play for without getting hurt? He's a precise route runner. Those guys, they always seem to have like ailments because everything's 100% when they do those quick route running. His route running ability is fantastic, but do you think Harbaugh's walking into his dream job, or is the Chargers kind of like almost trending toward a rebuild team right now?
The expectations are lower now than they were 2 years ago. So it is a good job in a sense where I bet you their win total is going to be 7.5, maybe 8.5. I don't think it's going to be 9.5 this year. So that shows that the market's going to be cooler on him. They're not expected to win the division. So if he wins 10 or 11 games and they somehow, then it's a huge win. Whereas that was expected a couple of years ago. So I like the situation.
Yes, I do too. What about Drake May? Where do you want him to go? JT.
I feel like Drake May. It's a weird thing. I think he can go to Washington. I think Washington really wants Caleb Williams, so I think they really want to move up. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think Washington ends up taking him just because that's who's there. Maybe they get crazy and they go, okay, we're going to take Jaden Daniels at 2 instead. But it seems like one of those 2 spots. Maybe somebody's down on him. Jaden Daniels is the guy that I'm like, I just can't put my thumb on it because he had just a magical season, but their wide receivers were awesome. But I just did not see a guy that was a top 5 pick coming into this season. And so I'm still not 100% sold on him. I know everybody says they're going top 3, but for some reason, I don't think they're going top 3. I don't know why. I have nothing to base that on. For some reason, I think the Raiders or someone late is going to come in with a crazy trade offer and try to get Jalen Daniels. I could see the Pats moving out of there and just being like, man, are we really that good if we get a QB right now? Or do we move out and get as many picks as we can? Rebuild that defense and try to kind of just maybe they're like somebody else in the draft and they're like willing to move down to take somebody later. I feel like the Pats are going to do something.
They do.
I don't see them sitting there at 3. I really don't.
It's a new regime, though. New regime.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that's the other question. Is like, okay, we're used to seeing them do these certain things. Well, what are they going to do now? How much say is Kraft going to have in what they do here at 3? Or are they, or does he say, okay, new guys, like, go at it, get whatever you want. Tell me what you want, and let's do it.
So we talked about the best McCarthy landing spots. What about Jaden Daniels? Alan?
Yeah, I think when JT said the Raiders, I was like, ooh, okay, that feels like a Raiders pick right there, right? I'm worried that if Jaden Daniels goes in the top 3 to one of those teams, that we're going to have these high expectations that aren't met. Obviously, there's a good, nice floor there with the mobility and all that stuff. I wanted just to circle back very briefly. Drake May feels like this year's CJ Stroud in a sense where he's being overlooked. He's not going to go 101 in any of our Superflex rookie drafts, but you're almost going to be happy you got him at 103, right? Like 104 was the pick last year when you landed CJ Stroud. I mean, again, he could have gone 103 or whatever, but Bijan, Anthony Richardson were 1 and 2. I didn't see a draft where that didn't happen. And Drake May was like, he was considered the 101 back and forth with Caleb for a while, and then the narrative switch. That's why sometimes I come into like this rookie evaluation stuff like in March or like late February, because everyone's already bored of their own takes and have gone back and forth 6 times, and then we can get back to like normality right around now. And no shade, because we need guys like JT that are doing the 2029 class now. That's how I get my information. So by the way, which JV high schoolers no, I'm only kidding. Your original question, Drake May, man, any team he goes on, he seems like the prototypical guy that's going to have, longevity. 6'4", 223, good resume. The only thing, and I can't get it out of my head, and this is no connection thing, we saw this with Mitch Trubisky, right? He was the right size, top draft capital, and then it just failed. I know it was a small sample size with Trubisky, but man, Drake May, it's just like everything right there is check, check, check to be like a Kirk Cousin-esque type of fantasy career where it just gives you the points. You're happy you took them. So I'd like to see him anywhere, even in New England. I think he'd be he'll have some upside for fantasy.
Yeah. JT, what about Bo Nix?
Again, I think he's got to be in the right system. He's got to have someone's running a short West Coast passing game. Where does he fit the best there? Is it Denver? Does Denver, if they miss out? I've seen a lot of people mock Bo Nix to Denver in the first, and I'm like, man, I can see them taking him. I just don't know if they go ahead and take him in the first. That seems like a reach to me. But you never know how desperate some of these teams are at QB. I could definitely see him taking him in the second or the third. I feel like that's where they would, like a Drew Brees. Drew Brees went in the second. Every hyping him up in the first, ended up falling in the second. I could see Knicks going in the second to the Broncos. That kind of feels like the spot to me. I know quite a few Vikings fans like him. I think they want to try to get JJ if they can. If they can't, they're another one that I don't know if he fits as well with the Vikings, to be honest with you, as he would maybe with the Broncos. But those are probably the 2 spots I see the most if I'm looking at Knicks, at least landing spots, I think.
Yeah. Chris, Joel Smith. Should I take Caleb Williams with the 101 in a Dynasty Superflex? Current quarterbacks are Purdy, Ritter, Heineke, Dobbs, Davis Mills, Trey Lance. I love hearing Alan talk, by the way. Big fan of Sirius XM Radio. So Alan's everywhere, man. If you don't know Alan Seslowsky, follow this man. He's the best. He's like one of my role model. One day I'm going to grow up and be Alan Seslowsky.
And it's funny because I feel the same way about John McGlynn. I want to grow up one day and be John McGlynn.
You got a lot of eating to do, buddy.
No, thank you. Honestly, thanks, new mailman. That's what's that? New mailman Chris. Is that his?
Chris Joel Smith. He's in me and JT's home dynasty league here.
It's nice. Anytime. It's always I always get embarrassed to take a compliment, but it seems genuine, so I will thumb up him. So yeah, I think that you take Caleb for the same reason you took Trevor Lawrence for the floor, right? He will not fail as a pick. There's a very special insulation for the 101. If Bryce Young last year was the 110, right, in the real NFL draft, he probably wouldn't be starting again this year. Maybe a couple games at best. He's the 101. He's going to get a full year. When a quarterback is drafted 101, you have a minimum, and this is if they're horrible, of 2 full seasons of starts. Okay? Now, if things are okay, you probably get 3. And then obviously it goes up from there. So you take Caleb, hoping there's upside, but understand he's almost a can't miss for fantasy football unless he is like the worst all-time quarterback, which he can't be because this Bryce Young is still in the league.
Yeah, and we talked about the roster the setup here. He got nothing besides Purdy here. So yes, I think in this situation, it's almost a desperation throw, but you're in a perfect situation with 101 to take a quarterback when you need him here. So yes, absolutely.
What do you guys think? He said he has Lance coming back from the dead a little bit. Did you hear those? Did you see those news blurbs about that he could be Minnesota's quarterback? I'd be into that.
garbage. That's somebody just trying to get hits on.
Oh, that's clickbait. All right, I felt
He's
for
still
it.
only 23. I mean,
And never
it's
got a
not
chance.
like he hasn't had any chance yet. Only 23. Man, I wouldn't give up on him compared to some of these guys coming back out are older than him right now. Just think if he would have played the whole 3 or 4 seasons in college with the COVID and coming out just now.
Poor man's
what
Josh
people would think
Dobbs.
about him.
Poor
So
man's
who-
Josh Dobbs.
Trey Lance or Jameis Winston? Who would you want as your quarterback in Minnesota?
Trey Lance.
What?
Unknown upside.
Are you nuts?
I like that. I wish Jameson would have got a shot. I'm starting to get off the train. I just don't think everyone's ever going to give him a shot again. I actually would, if I'm one of these teams that's looking for somebody, man, I don't know why you wouldn't try to go get Trey Lance and make a move. If it falls apart and it doesn't happen, you're probably not out that much.
I think Winston likes being a backup quarterback, by the way. He's had
I do.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
by the way, so would
he
I.
stayed, when he stayed and did that, I was like, oh, I think he's happy. He's comfy. He's like, I'm good with just doing this because he's making good money to be the backup.
$9 million to be a backup quarterback. Why wouldn't you? That's the best job in the world.
Yes, everyone's always like, "Oh, you want the?" Some guys think, listen, I'll compete if I have to, but if I could sit there and hold the clipboard and be the funniest guy in the locker room, better job. My life is not going to change from being a $9 millionaire to a $30 millionaire. It's going to be very similar lifestyle, same car, same type of house, same everything.
Yeah. Last question. All right. We all saw Brady Quinn. I thought he was going to go to Miami at number 9 back in the day. I was actually in Vegas when the draft happened. I was buying shots for everyone because Brady Quinn fell to the Dolphins, and it didn't happen. The guy sat in the blue room forever. Who this year? Which quarterback is going to be in the Brady Quinn blue room? Do you think? Alan, I'll start with you.
That's a great question. So all these guys come. So okay, basically, it's who's the guy who's expected to go in the first round. That's not going to go in the first round. The Will Levis thing.
Pretty much.
I mean, those top 3 guys are all going in the first round. So,
and Tennessee tried trading in the first round to get Will Levis, by the way. So he went to the second early, but he should have been a first round quarterback.
Right. It doesn't, like, everyone at least knew that Will Levis was a polarizing first round guy. I guess the only chance for it is to be if anyone after QB4 comes to the draft, Nix, Penix, Rattler, Joe Milton, obviously those guys are not going to be first round picks, but JJ McCarthy would be the only guy that it possibly could happen to, but I don't think it could happen this year. I think that maybe I'm just, sticking my finger in the electrical socket again here, but these guys are locked in, not only like first rounders, but top 15, like JT said earlier.
Yeah. All right. JT, real fast. Who do you think your guy is?
I'm right with Alan on that. I think the same way. I think those guys go in there. I don't think there's any way JJ gets out of the top 15. And it's going to be one of those guys. If I went off mock drafts right now, the guy would be Bo Nix. I just don't think he's going in the first round. No. I see him getting mocked in the first round quite a bit. I think he's getting mocked just because teams need QB, but I just don't see them passing on some of the other talent to go grab him. I think he could be had in the second, third round. So he would be the guy I would think people will be talking about. Does he go first round? And I think he doesn't.
If he goes to the NFL draft, he deserves to be, like sitting in the green room with all the cameras on him. Like, you're asking for it if you go, Bo.
Right. You set yourself up for failure. Well, thank you very much, Alan. Really appreciate you coming on this morning. You can find them everywhere. The guy's everywhere. The guy's on everything. We have another 45-minute show talking about all the places you can find Alan Seslowsky on. One of my favorite guys in this whole industry. Every show I listen to. Yeah, I love when your voice comes in my ears, man. Thanks for jumping on today. And JT, thanks for making the show awesome as usual. Also, and we will see you around. You're gonna keep your inbox open, man. I'll be hitting you up this offseason with a couple more invites if you got time for me.
Always time for you guys. And JT, nice meeting you for the first time, man. You're talent. You're a good talent, and we both have mutual admiration for our friend Johnny McGlynn.
Smartest guys in the room here, man. I bring the smart guys on here so I can feel like I'm part of the crew.
Big love fest. I wish I can kiss you right now, John.
All right, thank you very much, guys. I will talk to you later.